Welcome back. This is Chicken Philosophy. The Secret of the Golden Flower, Part 25. What an interesting coincidence. In 3 days, it's going to be 2025 or 2025. 2025 is shorter to say. Anyway, yeah, cool. Isn't that neat? Anyway, yeah, we're here. We did it. We're gonna have some Secret of the Golden Flower today. Isn't that nice? I think it's nice. Today, I'm gonna burn some Nag Champa for personal reasons I'm not gonna go into. And there's a bird. That might be a chipmunk. That repetitive noise. I'm pretty sure actually that's a chipmunk. It seems like a bird, but it's not. Did you catch the Martin Luther yesterday? I know a lot of you, more than not. Sometimes like 300 people. If it's BT doing something like Secret of the Golden Flower or Carl Jung these days, like 300 people come to watch it, which is kind of like, wow, okay. But if it's Edward doing Martin Luther, like 40 maximum. So yeah, I'm just going to give that a plug. If you have time. Let me preface this by saying this might be, okay. This is the second time in the history of chicken philosophy that I'm aware of, that I can think of right now, that I have recommended, third time. This is the third episode which I have recommended watching. I mean, to be here on the Taoist Alchemy, segment, recommending Martin Luther, like that's weird. That's weird, but I'm doing it. It was part 28. And I'll just tell you, I played like various diss tracks, like rap, diss tracks where people talk shit. Because Martin Luther was talking a lot of shit. He was laying it out, and he was being very, very rap battle-y. As close as you could get in 1530 to... I'm too white. I don't know what the proper linguistics are for talking about this sort of thing, but yeah, it was a diss track. It was he built himself up and knocked the other side down. Built himself up, knocked the other side down, but he did it in the most like verbose, like kind of like flowery way. But he actually had like when you hear what he's saying, you're like, oh. It makes sense that he's pissed off, But he was a very unique person about whom I disagree. If you've been watching Secret of the Golden Flower, you know that we here at Chicken Philosophy disagree with Carl Jung from time to time. We disagree with Martin Luther much more often, you might say. By the way, there's a new season of Squid Games. I'm not pointing to a link or anything. I'm pointing to this guy. Can you see him? Is it easy to tell that he's like laying down? I'll just see. We got him up. He was handmade by a family that ran a shop in Darjeeling, West Bengal, India. He's the one of the bad guys from Squid Games. The lower rank, if I recall correctly. Maybe they just had different roles, but I think the one with the square was the boss, and then the one with the circle had a different role, but the one with the triangle, they were like lower than the square, but they might shoot you, so that's fun. All right, so what are we doing here? We did the incense, we didn't do the beverage. But we're going to. He just opened up a bonus space. I've just decided today is going to be a double I Ching episode. But first, the beverage. is most certainly not going to be this vile, non-alcoholic Carl Jung stuff, but in honor of the fact that we're going to be reading Carl Jung today, make no mistake about it. We are not, by any stretch of the imagination, reading anything called The Secret of the Golden Flower. We are reading Carl Jung, talking about The Secret of the Golden Flower, which is fine. It's just for clarification. By the way, if instead of that you would like to hear me read aloud, the English translation of the Chinese texts, really, there's a second text in there, the Huiming Ching. Anyway, that's part 6. If you want to hear Carl Jung and friends and descendants of friends and their wives, talk about The Secret of the Golden Flower for 5 episodes that are at the beginning, then you can start at episode 1. If you want the text, you start at episode 6. If you want the Carl Jung at the end, the introduction to the Carl Jung, then it's probably 23, 22, 20, I don't know. Maybe I should pay attention to that. So next time I can tell you where you can start if you want that. That's what we're reading today, but we're not at the beginning. We're partway in, but we've got a ways to go. Click here, there's the playlist. Bye for the people clicking away. Okay, so that's done. What we are in fact going to have is just a little splash of this. And special thanks again to my friends at Gwydion. Do I shake it? No, that seems really gauche, Edward. You know what else is gauche? Using the word gauche. Cheers. All right, I'll keep that. I won't finish it right now. There's no need to finish. Why would I finish it right now? I'll keep that there for to mark special occasions today in the reading. Like when the text is really good, like I'll drink to that, or this is upsetting me, so I'm gonna have to drink this. That either one of those. So we've done the incense, we've done the beverage. There isn't really anything else to do. We did a Martin Luther plug for some reason. So now comes the time when we do 2 I Ching. Okay, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do 1 for today's reading, one that's going to be about that. And that's going to go over here where the Squid Games guy was, because now there's this nice blank space and I just want to fill it with something. So we're going to make that for today's episode. And the second one we're going to put right here, that's for you and me and everyone else watching this episode of Chicken Philosophy, for either a blessing, if it's good, for the new year, or something to keep in mind as we go into the new year, depending on what it is. Like if it's like warning, then it's like, okay, but we'll take that as a kind of blessing too. Hopefully it'll be more of a blessing than that. So for today's episode, we have, and remember, these are all the cards. Since we've done so many by now, then I want to make sure that I don't waste everybody's time flipping coins and getting ones I've already gotten. So all the I Ching figures that we've already gotten have been removed from this deck. So I'm confident that this is one we can put up there on the side. So this is for this episode. Broken, solid, broken, solid, broken. And Editor Edward, if you wouldn't mind turning up the music a bit. So it's con, or perhaps it's can. Editor Edward. That's silly. At this point, I read the description for the wrong hexagram, so now I'm going to read the correct one. the figure you're seeing here on the screen is called Khan, or Can, whichever it is. I assume Khan, meaning water. So water on top, water on the bottom. Put them together, you get water, kind of like in real life. The abysmal, or water. The description is flow like pure water through difficult situations. That's for this episode, so we'll put that here. And for this episode, that was for this episode. This is for you and me going into the new year. Just people in general that are hearing my voice or speaking my voice. That group of people. All right. That one is triple broken, solid broken, solid. One moment, please. So earth on bottom, fire on top, figure 35. Chin, C-H-I-N, progress, thank God, unless it has some terrible spin. You progress like the rising sun. The brighter your virtue, the higher you rise. I'll take it. I think that's a good blessing. I think it counts as a blessing with a little bit of a warning in it that if you let your virtue go dim, future not so bright. So there's I'm sure, later after, the plan is after we finish Secret of the Golden Flower, which we're more than halfway done, maybe 2/3 almost. I'm going to keep the segment going with that same but I'm going to read the Tao Te Ching, the little book, and then I'm going to read this whole book. So then we'll decide what to do after that. If it's time to move on and let the pedal change into something else, or follow that thread still. I don't know where else to take that thread, but there's a whole podcast called Buddhist Books Podcast for those who are just tuning in. I came to Bhutan and I got so moved by touching the breastplate of Padmasambhava, they say, that he gave to his consort Tashi up in the Himalayan mountains, Maybe you don't know. But anyway, I got all inspired, and it was at the Nyingma place, and I had always associated Nyingma with the type of Buddhism my dad raised me with. So I got a Nyingma robe, and then I put it on a shelf, and I was like, I shouldn't put that on. And years rolled by, and this fucking guy came out. First there was the scandal. I had compartmentalized. Have I told you this story already? There was the Shambhala, the head guy, and a bunch of the head guys were doing all kinds of terrible abuse. And then it all came out, and it was a scandal. But I had compartmentalized that, saying that's the American Tibetan Buddhism. That's something else. That's not real Tibetan Buddhism. But then this guy in Bhutan, the head of a lineage, was saying that the girls were to blame because they blabbed, and that, gurus have needs too. And I was so disgusted that after a year or two, I really missed Buddhism because I had kind of dialed it down to zero, in my world for a while. And then I started collecting old Buddhist scriptures, and I decided I wanted to read them and kind of ignore the people in the world that call themselves Buddhist in present day, and just kind of have my own relationship with it. And then, something happened that made me decide that it would be a good idea to put on the robe and start recording Buddhist Books Podcast, if I haven't pointed it already. I pointed it twice, so up here twice. Cheers. All right. Let's pick up right where we left off last time. Editor Edward, it's always a good opportunity to be creative, put on something else, some other music. 2. the circular movement, and the center. As has already been pointed out, the union of opposites on a higher level of consciousness is not a rational thing, nor is it a matter of will. It is a psychic process of development which expresses itself in symbols. Historically, this process has always been represented in symbols, and today, the development of individual personality still presents itself in symbolic figures. This fact was revealed to me in the following observations. The spontaneous fantasy products we mentioned above become more profound and concentrate themselves gradually around abstract structures which apparently represent principles. True Gnostic archai, R-A-R-C-H-A-I. File that, put a pin in that. That'll come up later in the Nag Hammadi, because it's a Gnostic thing, right? Anyway, when the fantasies are chiefly expressed in thoughts, the results are intuitive formulations of dimly felt laws or principles, which at first tend to be dramatized or personified. Again, anyone who's also watching the Black Books, that's what he's talking about. Hence my cartoonish idea. You know, it's one angle at which to look at it is he's telling white people don't do Eastern practices. What you need to do is come to one of my sessions, or come to a Jungian therapist. So he's competing with esoteric spirituality in the East, or whatever. Anyway, I'll keep reading. Parentheses, we shall come back to these again later. And parentheses, no doubt. If the fantasies are expressed in drawings, similar symbols appear, which are chiefly of the so-called mandala type. Quote, mandala, end quote, means a circle, more especially a magic circle. Those of you who are watching everything already are familiar with this from the Shingon Buddhism series over on our sister podcast, Buddhist Book Podcast. You remember that whole story? Anyway, mandala means a circle, more especially a magic circle, and this symbol is not only to be found all through the East, but also among us. Mandalas are amply represented in the Middle Ages. The early Middle Ages are especially rich in Christian mandalas, and for the most part show Christ in the center, with the four evangelists, or their symbols. Anybody know them? Editor Edwards, sorry to give you extra work to do, but let's put them up on the screen, all by themselves. And if you're like, why does that look familiar, Editor Edward, would you put the rest of it up on the screen? There you go, except in this case, Jesus was a lady. But she was making a cross with her legs, so same. Where were we? What? Mandala found at there we go. At their cardinal points. This conception, you'll also find it in churches. That's always fun when you go to old churches and you're like, holy shit, it's the four symbols from the corner of the world card and the tarot, or the universe card, whatever. Must be a very ancient one. For the Egyptians represented Horus with his four sons in the same way. Parentheses, it is known that Horus with his four sons has close connections with Christ and the four evangelists. It is known.
It is known. It is known.
And parentheses. Later, there is to be found an unmistakable and very interesting mandala in Jacob Boehm's book on the soul. Footnote. For the questions of the soul, 1602, First English Translation. Editor Edward, would you put that up on the screen for a moment? So that's what Carl Jung was making reference to. Okay. This latter mandala, it is clear, deals with a psycho-cosmic system strongly colored by Christian ideas. Boehm calls it the, quote, philosophical eye, end quote, or the, quote, mirror of wisdom. seems like we should put up Akshobhya, the mirror-like wisdom, the blue Buddha. What? Yeah, okay, here we go. Which obviously means the summa of secret knowledge. What's summa? A comprehensive summary of, or treatise on a subject, especially theology or philosophy. Okay, I should have known that, I suppose. For the most part, the mandala form is that of a flower, cross, or wheel, with a distinct tendency towards quadripartite structure. Parentheses, one is reminded of the tetractys, the fundamental number in the Pythagorean system. End parentheses. Mandalas of this sort are also to be found in the sand paintings used in the ceremonies of the Pueblo and Navajo Indians. This was 1930. It wasn't until 1990 that people started saying, hey, stop saying that. So we gotta cut them some slack. That was what they called it back then. But the most beautiful mandalas are, of course, those of the East, especially those belonging to Tibetan Buddhism. Same page with you there, Carl. The symbols of our text are represented in these mandalas. I have also found mandala drawings among the mentally ill, and indeed among persons who certainly did not have the least idea of any of the connections we have discussed. Among my patients, I have come across cases of women. Yeah, we've heard. Those not watching the Carl Jung Black Book series really ought to do so. Especially those early episodes if you're interested in his female patients. But anyway, what? Women who did not draw mandalas but who danced them instead. In India, this type is called mandala nritya, or mandala dance. I'm sure I didn't pronounce that correctly. And the dance figures express the same meanings as the drawings. My patients can say very little about the meaning of the symbols, but are fascinated by them and find them in some way or other expressive and effective with respect to their psychic condition. Well said there, Mr. Polonius. I'll drink to that. Cheers. Our text promises to, quote, reveal the secret of the golden flower of the Great One, end quote. The longer title, I suppose. The golden flower is the light. The light of heaven is the dove. The golden flower is a mandala symbol which I have often met with in the material brought me by my patients. That was his cover story. He was doing it all himself. And then he's like, yeah, these insane people told me this. But no, it was all Carl. Right. It is drawn either seen from above as a regular geometric ornament or as a blossom growing from a plant. The plant is frequently a structure in brilliant fiery colors growing out of a bed of darkness and carrying the blossom of light at the top, a symbol similar to that of the Christmas tree. A drawing of this kind also expresses the origin of the golden flower. For according to the Hui Ming Ching, the, quote, germinal vesicle, end quote, is nothing other than the, quote, yellow castle, end quote, the, quote, heavenly heart, end quote. Editor Edward, could you put the mandala? He's describing, like, here, I guess. The terrace of life, the square-inch field of the square-foot house, For you metric folk, that's approximately like 2.3 centimeters in the approximately, like, I don't know, however many tenths of a... The purple hall of the city of Jade, the dark pass of the sea. It is also called the border region of the snow mountains, the primal pass, the realm of the greatest joy, the land without boundaries, and the altar upon which consciousness and life are made. Put it back up. If a dying man does not know this germinal vesicle, says the Hui Ming Ching, he will not find the unity of consciousness and life in 1,000 births, nor in 10,000 aeons. The beginning, in which everything is still one, and which therefore appears as the highest goal, lies at the bottom of the sea in the darkness of the unconscious. In the germinal vesicle, consciousness and life, parentheses, human nature and life, saying Ming, right, and parentheses, are still a unity, inseparably mixed like the sparks in the refining furnace. Within the germinal vesicle is the fire of the ruler, and the sages began their work at the germinal vesicle. Note the fire analogies. Those are all quotes, by the way. I didn't feel like saying quote and unquote so many times. I know a series of European mandala drawings in which something like a plant seed surrounded by its coverings is shown floating in water, and from the depths below, fire penetrating the seed makes it grow and causes the formation of a large golden flower from within the germinal vesicle. This symbolism refers to a sort of alchemical process of refining and ennobling. Darkness gives birth to light. Out of the lead of the water region grows the noble gold. What is unconscious becomes conscious in the form of a process of life and growth. Parentheses, Hindu Kundalini Yoga affords a complete analogy. End quote. Spoilers. When we finish with the black books, we're about to start book 5 in 2 episodes. We'll start the 5th of the 7. When we finish the 7, we're not jumping to the red, because the red is like, okay, if you've been sitting there for like 300 hours watching the dailies from, like if they're filming some movie, Back to the Future, let's say. You're sitting there, first you watch them film it with that first guy, and then they fire him, they bring in Michael J. Fox, and you just are there every day watching, like, as the footage comes in, for like a chapter of your life, and then you finally get to the end of it. If someone's like, so you want to watch the movie? You might be like, I feel like I already have, but I'm sure it's a good movie. Well, we're going to get to it later, the red book, I mean. After we finish reading the black books, we're going to read this red book. It's called The Serpent Power, and it's a translation of some document from the 1500s, like an Indian, scripture, I guess, writing. And it's translated by Sir John Woodroffe, who was going by the alias Arthur Avalon. And then, after we finish this book, which is going to take a little while, keep in mind, we're only reading the last few pages of each of the first book took a while, and then from the second on, we're just reading the last tiny little bit at the end of all these books. So this will take a while to get through. And the reason we're reading that is because Carl Jung once upon a time read it and then gave a lecture. And that lecture became the foundation of the Western understanding of such things. So this is the lecture. So after we read that, we're going to read this. And at that time, you and I, having read all of this, the black books, and all Carl Jung's ranting and raving and Secret of the Golden Flower, will then, alongside Carl Jung, read this whole book, and then we'll read his lecture about it. And I think by then we'll have a pretty clear picture of exactly what Carl Jung's imprint was on the Western understanding of Eastern philosophy, generally speaking. And then when then we'll be able to see what's not that. Also, we'll be able to see the thing itself and the which is the thing they're talking about. But we'll also be able to hear their distinctive voices talking about it and what they're saying and where they're coming from and what time period and what assumptions they have. And then we ourselves can decide, go through, write them down, what are the assumptions, and decide, we'll give each one 5 stars, or we'll put it on the tier system. This assumption is an S, this assumption is a D, I'm not going to have this assumption anymore, And I think it'd be I think it's a mitzvah doing all this, it's like, let's put it all into focus. I'm doing it for myself, obviously, but why not share it, But am I done reading? Did I finish reading and just start rambling? Yeah, so what? Yeah. So, because he just made reference to, see my other work, which is this, which you and I are going to get to, but after we read the book that he read that got him there, after we finish reading the black books. So we're going along this journey in order to arrive at a particular point. And then we'll understand this reference. See, it's like an Ouroboros, snake devouring its tail. Then then we can come back around and look at the reference he's making and have a full understanding of what really is in those parentheses. I'll read the parentheses again. Parentheses. Hindu Kundalini Yoga affords a complete analogy. All right. That's where we're going to end today. It's like mid-sentence. No. In this way, the union of consciousness and life takes place. That's where we're going to end. At the end of the paragraph. I'm going to let my future self figure out how to mark that, because I don't have one of those little sticky things right now. I enjoyed it, I have to say. It was a good episode. It was a good reading at the very least. What did you think of it? Comment below if you'd like. If anybody, can you zoom in, Editor Edward? Can you show the books that are up on that top shelf? And just move along slowly. And if people feel like mentioning anything about those books or making any requests, I will consider them. I'm ultimately going to do what I'm going to do. But if you had any I'd be interested in hearing any of these, then let me know. And what else? Happy New Year. Probably you'll hear from me again before 2025, knowing me. But, just in case some plans suddenly come up and I don't have a chance to talk to you before the New Year, Happy New Year's Eve. And then, on New Year's, I can wish you Happy New Year. It seems like weird to say Happy New Year when it's not yet, buddy. All right. One time I went to Times Square in I think it was 2005, December, into 2006, January, by myself. There was someone who let me stay, but one of my students, it was back in the cult days. And I was there at Times Square, and I didn't know. I thought the ball dropping at Times Square was when the party began. But it turns out it's when the party ends. The police come and push everybody out and say, all right, get the fuck out of here. But your best bet, I'd say, what I did, based on my few days of research, was I went to Penn Station and I hopped on a train to the Village. Went bar hopping. Why not? All right, I guess that's it. It was a younger me. There was someone talking shit about someone else whose name I happen to know, and then it was funny. That was interesting. There were stories when it started. That's not why you're here. Did you? Yeah, you've seen this guy before. You saw recently there was the monk, the solar-powered monk that was nodding and drumming. This is the solar-powered Ganesh. Somehow getting some All right, until next time, everybody.